You know what really gets me about baseball? It's not always the guys making $30 million a year that tell the most interesting stories. Sometimes it's the journeyman who spent a decade grinding through the minors that shows you what this game is really about. And Nathan Lukes? Man, his situation right now is a perfect example of how quickly things can change in this sport. So let's talk about Nathan Lukes, 31 years old, left-handed hitter, plays the outfield. If you're a casual Blue Jays fan, you might remember him from last year when he finally got a full season in the big leagues. 135 games, hit .255 with 12 home runs. Nothing that's going to make SportsCenter's top 10, but a solid 2-win season according to Baseball Reference. For a guy who was a 16th round pick back in 2015 by Cleveland, that's actually pretty remarkable. But here's where it gets interesting and honestly kind of frustrating if you're a Nathan Lukes fan. The Blue Jays just traded for Jesús Sánchez, and suddenly Lukes is staring down a roster crunch that could send him right back to AAA despite having the best season of his career. Think about that for a second. You're 31 years old, you just proved you belong in the majors, and now you're fighting for playing time in spring training like you're some 23-year-old prospect trying to make a name for yourself. The numbers don't lie about the competition he's facing. You've got Sanchez coming in from that trade. You've got Addison Barger, Dalton Varsho, both left-handed hitters who are going to get their at-bats against righties. George Springer's still going to get his outfield time when he's not at DH. Then you've got Miles Straw, who's basically a defensive specialist and pinch runner at this point, but still takes up a roster spot. Davis Schneider's in the mix. And the organization wants to get looks at guys like Eloy Jimenez and RJ Schreck this spring. That's a lot of bodies competing for not that many spots. Now, normally, if you put up a 2-win season, you're not sweating spring training. You've earned your spot. But Lukes is in this weird position where the front office clearly values something he doesn't have: elite exit velocity. And this is where the modern game sometimes drives me crazy. Sanchez is in the 79th percentile for average exit velocity. Lukes, 19th percentile. The dude doesn't hit the ball particularly hard, but you know what? He hit 12 home runs last year, had an on-base percentage over .320, and was worth 2 wins. Sanchez, in roughly the same number of games, was worth 1.2 wins and has never had a 2-win season in his career. So why does the organization prefer Sanchez? Power potential, the ability to hit the ball hard. In today's game, that measurable tool gets you opportunities that consistency sometimes doesn't. And look, I get it from a front office perspective. Sanchez is younger. He's got that raw power tool that could theoretically break out. But if you're asking me who I'd rather have on my roster right now, today, it's Lukes, the guy who's actually proven he can produce at the major league level over a full season. What makes this even more complicated is Lukes can play all 3 outfield positions. He posted a +1 in outs above average last year across those spots. Is he a Gold Glover? No. Would I want him playing center field every day? Probably not. But he's competent everywhere, and in a sport where versatility matters more than ever, that should count for something. He's the perfect 4th outfielder. The guy who can spell your regulars, give you quality at-bats, play adequate defense, and not hurt you in any phase of the game. And here's another thing that bothers me about this situation. Lukes is 31 years old, and he's still making basically league minimum. Because of how the service time system works in baseball, he won't be eligible for arbitration until 2028. He won't hit free agency until 2031, assuming he even stays in the majors that long. The man spent years working his way through the minor league system, finally got his shot at age 30, produced immediately, and he's still not getting paid anywhere close to what he's worth. There's something fundamentally broken about a system where a player can reach his 30s and still be years away from earning market value. I've always thought there should be some kind of adjustment for guys who don't make the majors until they're older. Maybe if you debut after age 28, you fast-track to arbitration. Something. Because the current system basically punishes players for taking longer to develop or for being stuck in organizations with better depth. Lukes has been productive at every level. He wasn't a top prospect, sure, but he forced multiple organizations to keep promoting him by simply performing. That's worth something. And that's what makes his story compelling. He's never been the flashy guy, never had that one elite tool that makes scouts drool. He doesn't run a 4.340 or hit balls 500 feet in batting practice. He's just a baseball player who grinds out quality at-bats, plays solid defense, and helps his team win games. In an era where everyone's obsessed with exit velocity and launch angle and StatCast metrics, Lukes represents something increasingly rare: the player who succeeds through consistency and work ethic rather than physical gifts. The projections for this year had him down for about 60 games, hitting .273 with 5 home runs and .8 wins above replacement. And that was probably before the Sánchez trade, so who knows if he'll even get that many opportunities now. It's entirely possible that a guy who was worth 2 wins last year ends up spending significant time in AAA because the organization would rather give those at-bats to someone with a higher ceiling, even if the floor is also lower. Look, I understand that baseball is a business. I understand that organizations have to make difficult decisions about roster construction. But man, it's hard not to feel for Nathan Lukes right now. Here's a guy who did everything right, waited his turn, seized his opportunity when it finally came, and now he's back to fighting for his career because the team decided they'd rather gamble on potential than reward production. That's baseball in 2026. That's the reality of being a journeyman in a sport that's increasingly obsessed with tools over results. Spring training's going to tell us a lot about how this plays out. If Lukes comes out raking, maybe he forces the organization's hand. Maybe he makes himself impossible to send down. Or maybe we're watching the beginning of the end for a guy who finally got his shot and is watching it slip away. Either way, his story matters. Because for every superstar making headlines, there are dozens of Nathan Lukes grinding away, trying to prove they belong. And that's the heartbeat of this game.